Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a time when Earth looked nothing like the place you know now. The Ice Age wasn't just one long cold snap, it was a world of grinding glaciers, thundering beasts, and tiny sparks of human survival in the frozen dark. Picture this: towering walls of ice rising higher than skyscrapers, endless winds slicing across plains, and snow that never seems to melt. You can already feel the chill in your bones, and honestly, you probably wouldn't survive this for more than a few hours without the right fur coat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and the local time. Where you're listening, I love seeing just how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first breath in this frozen world, and it's sharp like inhaling needles. Snow drifts higher than your knees, crunching with every slow step. The horizon is a blur of gray, broken only by jagged peaks of ice that jut out like the ribs of some massive skeleton. It's a landscape sculpted by glaciers giant, rivers of ice grinding across continents. They move slowly, yes, but with a power that crushes entire forests and reshapes valleys into U-shaped scars. You can still see carved into earth today, and you're standing right in the middle of it, listening to the eerie groans of shifting ice, the distant crack of avalanches, and the hollow silence that follows. It's beautiful, yes, but it's also utterly merciless. Some scientists think that up to a third of Earth's surface was locked under ice at the height of the last Ice Age. That's an almost unimaginable spread of frozen land. The oceans were lower, continents stretched farther, and the coastlines you know today were just empty plains of wind-blown dust. Imagine New York or London not as bustling cities, but as barren tundra swarmed with herds of animals. Historians still argue whether it was a single big freeze or a series of icy pulses that came and went. But either way, you're definitely going to need thicker socks. You keep walking, snowflakes dusting your hair, and you can't help but think of the odd fact that somewhere in this frozen landscape, human ancestors were not only surviving but thriving enough to leave behind traces we can still find. Archaeologists sometimes stumble upon preserved footprints in hardened mud or a bone needle that once stitched together. Mammoth hide clothing. The past feels close, like it's just under the snow waiting for you to brush it away. And speaking of odd details, did you know that some prehistoric communities may have used powdered minerals and even ground up charcoal as a kind of sunscreen? Imagine smearing soot across your face just to keep from snow blindness. Not exactly the kind of SPF you'd buy at a beach shop. But hey, desperate times, desperate measures. The wind cuts harder now, and you pull your furs closer, though let's be honest, they're imaginary furs, since you're listening from a cozy bed. Still, you can sense how alive this frozen world was. Herds of shaggy beasts trampled across the steppes. Predators stalked the edges of firelight, and humans with nothing but flint tools braved the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache just thinking about it. As you squint into the distance, you see a glacier's edge looming hundreds of feet tall, glowing faintly blue in the weak sunlight. You hear the crack like thunder as a chunk of ice the size of a house breaks away and crashes down, shattering into shards that glitter across the frozen ground. For a moment, it's almost too loud. And then silence swallows everything again. It's strange to think that all of this icy majesty was temporary. Earth cycles through warm and cold phases, And this particular deep freeze lasted tens of thousands of years. Still, standing here now, it feels eternal, as if the cold will never let go. You look down and see your footprints vanish almost instantly as wind-driven snow sweeps across them, erasing any sign you were here. A humbling reminder that in this world, nature doesn't just ignore you, it actively erases you. But then you notice something. Hopeful, the faint smoke of a fire, curling upward in the distance. Someone is out there clinging to survival just like you. You'll get closer soon, but for now, you take one more long, frozen breath, savoring the stillness, the silence, and the sheer magnitude of this icy stage. You push forward, crunching across the snow, and the sound beneath your boots shifts from soft powder to the deep, grinding rumble of ice on rock. Before you now rise the glaciers, the true titans of this frozen age. They're not just frozen rivers. They're alive in a way, creeping forward inch by inch, carving the earth with unstoppable patience. These colossal ice masses stretch farther than your eyes can follow, glistening under a pale sun that never feels warm enough. You pause and run your gloved hand against the glacier's wall. The surface feels like glass, smooth in places, jagged in others, etched with veins of frozen bubbles that have trapped the breath of ancient skies. Scientists studying ice cores today can read those bubbles, like pages in a diary measuring carbon, dust, even volcanic ash, learning what the atmosphere was like tens of thousands of years ago. It's like Earth stored receipts for every storm, fire, and sneeze of the planet, all pressed neatly into frozen layers. The glacier groans again, a sound that feels more like a vibration in your chest than something you hear with your ears. These giants grind forward with such force they crush entire forests to pulp, flatten hills, and carve mountains into sharp peaks and valleys. Some of the most dramatic landscapes we admire today, Norway's fjords, the Great Lakes of North America, the rolling drumlins of Ireland, are the scars left behind by these icy bulldozers. And here's the quirky tidbit. Glaciers sometimes move fast enough to earn the nickname galloping glaciers. Imagine a river of ice suddenly lurching forward miles in just a few months, swallowing everything in its path. Talk about a bad day for anyone who thought they had waterfront property. Historians still argue whether some of these surges were triggered by climate blips, internal pressure, or just the glaciers getting impatient. But whatever the cause, it's a reminder that these icy beasts had moods. You climb higher onto a ridge and look out over a valley swallowed by ice. The scale is absurd. It's like staring at an ocean frozen mid-wave, stretching to the horizon. In the distance, jagged peaks poke through like the spines of some giant beast. You think of the people and animals trying to live around these frozen fortresses. To them, this wasn't just scenery, it was an obstacle, a predator in its own right, creeping into valleys, forcing migrations, and reshaping entire ecosystems. Wind howls across the ridge, carrying tiny flecks of ice that sting your cheeks. The cold here isn't just uncomfortable, it's weaponized. Your eyelashes frost together when you blink too slowly, and your breath crystallizes before it hits the ground. Still, the view is mesmerizing. The glacier is both terrifying and hypnotic, a reminder that Earth doesn't care about your comfort. It's busy sculpting continents, and in one of those fun little historical quirks, early explorers who stumbled across these frozen landscapes sometimes believed glaciers were static, eternal monuments. They couldn't imagine that something so massive could actually move. It wasn't until the 19th century that scientists finally proved glaciers flow, reshaping everything in their path. Picture those poor guys with pickaxes insisting, "Nope, It's totally stuck, while the glacier was slowly chewing up valleys beneath their boots. You slide down the ridge a little, snow spraying around you, and stop at the glacier's edge again. Meltwater streams trickle beneath it, carrying ground-up rock called glacial flour, which makes the rivers downstream look cloudy and almost turquoise. Later generations would admire that strange, milky blue color in lakes carved out by glaciers, never realizing it was the fine dust left behind by an ice age that once roared. You crouch and press your ear to the ice. Faint trickles, pops, and cracks echo through the frozen mass like the heartbeat of the glacier itself. It feels alive. You can almost imagine it sighing, restless, planning its next slow, crushing step forward. Then, in the distance, a thunderous crash. Another chunk of ice, larger than a building, calves off the glacier's face and smashes into the valley below. The shockwave of sound rolls across the plain, and for a moment, you just stand there, stunned by how small you are compared to this shifting wall of ancient frozen water. It's humbling, isn't it? You're standing on a planet that's constantly under renovation. The glaciers acting as the ultimate demolition crew. And though they may seem like relics of a distant past, they still exist today, remnants of the ice age lingering in Greenland, Antarctica, and mountain ranges around the world. They're a reminder that Earth never really stopped breathing ice. As you turn away from the glacier, brushing snow from your shoulders, you can't help but feel like it's watching you leave silent, steady and unbothered. You'll carry on toward warmer signs of life, but the ice remains, creeping ever forward. Long after you're gone, you follow the crunch of snow down from the glacier's shadow and into the vast, windswept plains below. At first, it seems empty, just endless white and gray. But then the ground trembles slightly under your boots, and you realize you're not alone. From the haze ahead, a dark shape emerges, then another, and soon the entire horizon is rolling with movement. You're staring at a herd of woolly mammoths, shaggy giants taller than a two-story house, their long tusks curving like ivory scythes. The sound of them is overwhelming, low rumbles that vibrate in your chest, the cracking of snow beneath their massive feet, the occasional trumpet of a warning call. These animals aren't just oversized elephants, they're ice age specialists, cloaked in long brown hair with a thick layer of fat, insulating them against the brutal cold. You can almost feel the heat radiating from their shaggy flanks as they pass, a living tide of ancient power. And yet, despite their size, they're oddly graceful. They pick their way across the frozen tundra in long lines, each step deliberate, each trunk reaching for tough grasses buried beneath snow. Scientists believe their tusks weren't just for show. They may have been used like shovels to sweep snow aside, scraping down to the stubborn plants below. Imagine spending your entire life digging for salad under ice. Not exactly fine dining, but it worked for them. Close behind the mammoths. Smaller, but no less impressive shapes prowl. The edges of the herd, woolly rhinoceroses, their two horns jutting forward like lances. These beasts can weigh over 2 tons. And unlike the mostly docile mammoths, they're notoriously cranky. You catch one lifting its head, snow clinging to the long fur draped over its body, before it huffs a steamy breath and snorts like it's daring you to step closer. Spoiler alert, you don't. But it's not just lumbering herbivores out here. Your ears catch a different sound, low, guttural growls carried on the wind. You spin, scanning the white expanse. And there they are, saber-toothed cats, their massive canine teeth glinting as they stalk in the distance. These predators are the stuff of prehistoric nightmares. able to bring down prey far larger than themselves with ambush tactics. Historians still argue whether those exaggerated teeth were precision tools for killing or more like showy intimidation weapons. Either way, you're definitely not volunteering as their next science experiment. There's an eerie tension in watching these creatures together. The mammoths trudging in calm determination, the rhinos glaring at anything that moves, and the cats waiting for one mistake. It's like standing in the middle of an ancient chess game, where every piece is alive, hungry and terrifyingly strong. And here's a quirky tidbit for you. Scientists once found frozen remains of a baby woolly rhinoceros in Siberia, so well preserved that even its eyelashes were intact. Imagine walking along and tripping over a 30-year-old animal that looks like it just fell asleep. Nature's freezer really knows how to keep leftovers fresh. As you edge carefully past the herd, you hear the crackle of ice underfoot and pause. The mammoths lift their trunks, sniffing the air, suddenly restless. You freeze too, because when a creature the size of a small house gets spooked, you don't want to be the reason it decides to run. After a tense few seconds, they settle, continuing their slow march toward the horizon, leaving you standing in their wake. It's strange, isn't it? These were real animals, not myth, not fantasy. Entire ecosystems thrived around them: scavenger birds, foxes, wolves, all sustained by the megafauna that ruled the Ice Age plains. Yet one by one, they're gone now, vanished into extinction. Some say climate change did them in. Others blame overhunting by humans. And historians still argue whether it was a tragic combo of both. You turn your eyes back toward the horizon, watching the silhouettes of mammoths fade into the snowy haze, their low rumbles echoing long after they're gone. For a brief moment, you feel lucky, like you've stumbled into a time when the world was bigger, wilder, and louder than anything you know today. And then, with the cold still biting your cheeks, you keep moving, following the smoke of that distant human fire you spotted earlier. The smoke you saw earlier grows stronger now, curling lazily into the pale sky, and soon you catch the faint flicker of firelight dancing in the distance. Your steps quicken, crunching across frozen ground, and then you see them, small figures huddled together, wrapped in animal hides, the orange glow of flames painting their faces with warmth against the cold blue night. These are the humans of the Ice Age, your distant ancestors, clinging to life on the knife's edge of survival. You linger at the edge of their circle, taking in the scene. A group of perhaps 20 souls gathers close, their voices muffled but steady, their hands stretched toward the fire. The flames sputter as fat drips from a roasting bone, sending sparks into the air, and the smell of smoke mixes with the earthy tang of burning marrow. It's simple, primal, and yet, in this moment, you sense something remarkable, this fragile little bubble of warmth in a world that wants nothing more than to freeze it out of existence. One of the hunters sharpens a flint blade, the rhythmic scrape echoing like a metronome under the crackling fire. Children cling to their mothers, their cheeks ruddy from cold, their eyes wide and curious as they stare into the flames. You can almost feel their hunger, not just for food, but for security, for the small comfort of knowing that the fire will last the night. Here's your historical anchor. At the height of the last Ice Age, human groups were scattered and tiny, surviving in small bands that rarely numbered more than a few dozen. They roamed the plains and forests, following herds, scavenging, and improvising with whatever nature offered. And yet, from these humble firesides would grow the spark of culture, language, and art. It's almost funny to think that the same species that would one They launch rockets to the moon was once terrified of whether their campfire would last until dawn. But don't romanticize it too much. Life here is brutal. The average life expectancy barely scrapes 30 years, if that. And you'd better hope you're good at running, hiding, or throwing a spear, because predators aren't shy about targeting humans. Even worse, injuries that seem trivial today, a broken bone, a bad cut, could spell the end in a world without antibiotics. So yes, you probably wouldn't survive here either. And then, the quirky tidbit of the night. Some evidence suggests that Ice Age people used powdered reindeer antlers, mixed with fat as a kind of magical charm. Whether it was medicine, ritual, or just a prehistoric placebo, who knows? But picture someone smearing antler paste on their skin while whispering a prayer to keep away frostbite. Honestly, who needs a pharmacy when you've got deer parts and imagination? You edge closer to the fire, and one of the hunters looks up. His eyes narrow, not in anger, but in calculation, friend or foe. He gestures toward the fire, inviting you into the circle. You step forward, the heat wrapping you like a blanket. And for the first time tonight, your bones stop aching from the cold. You sit among them, listening to the low murmur of voices, the snap of wood, and the hiss of snowflakes melting as they land on the embers. The group leader raises a hand and speaks, his words guttural and strange, a language you can't quite grasp. But his meaning is clear enough. He points toward the dark horizon, where mammoths once marched. And then to the spears stacked beside the fire, a hunt is coming. Historians still argue whether humans of this era relied more on hunting or scavenging, whether they truly brought down mammoths with coordinated attacks, or simply stole scraps from the kills of saber-toothed cats and dire wolves. Either way, you get the sense that survival demanded constant courage, cleverness, and maybe a little luck. A child giggles beside you, waving a stick through the flames as sparks rise like tiny stars. You realize that despite the danger, the cold, and the hunger, these people are still human in the truest sense. They laugh, they play, they tell stories under the open sky. And for a fleeting moment, you feel connected to them, not as strangers, but as family across thousands of years. The fire crackles lower now, shadows stretching long across the snow. You pull your furs tighter and glance toward the dark, knowing the night is far from safe. Out there, in the icy black, predators wait. But here, for now, you sit among the sparks of humanity, fragile yet unyielding, daring to survive another day in a world made of ice. The fire dies to embers, and the night stretches thin. But when dawn finally crawls across the horizon, you wake to the smell of food, or what passes. For food here in the Ice Age, the camp is stirring. Hunters pulling on furs, women tending to pots carved from stone or bone, children gnawing on scraps left from the night before. It isn't a feast, but it's survival. And you're about to get a crash course in prehistoric dining. The first thing handed to you is a strip of dried meat, leathery and tough, made from mammoth or bison, you can't tell which. But it tastes like salted earth and smoke. You chew slowly, grateful for the calories even if your jaw starts to ache. Beside you, one of the hunters cracks a bone with a sharp stone, pries it open, and tips it upward to drink the rich, greasy marrow inside. He offers you a turn, and though it feels strange, you realize this gooey, fatty substance is one of the most prized foods around. Forget steak dinners in this world. Marrow is liquid gold a woman digs in the snow and unearths shriveled roots, brittle and stringy, which she tosses into a pot balanced over the fire. Soon the smell is sharp, earthy, and almost bitter. Roots and tubers were staples for Ice Age people, chewy, hard to find, and sometimes poisonous if you picked the wrong kind. You take a bite, and it's like chewing on a raw carrot someone left in the freezer too long. Delicious? Not exactly. Filling? Barely. Necessary? Absolutely. Here's your historical anchor. Diets of Ice Age humans varied wildly depending on where they lived. Those in the far north survived almost entirely on meat and fat from animals like reindeer, seals, or mammoths, while groups in milder zones dug up plants, nuts, and berries. Archaeologists analyzing bones can still tell what people ate by measuring isotopes trapped in their skeletons, a prehistoric dinner menu written in calcium. And for a quirky tidbit, you'll love this. In some regions, evidence suggests humans used dried animal dung. Yes, you heard that right, as a cooking fuel. Imagine sitting down to a stew cooked over smoldering mammoth patties. Not exactly the kind of detail you'll find in a glossy cookbook. Still, dung burns surprisingly well when wood is scarce. And when the tundra offers more snow than firewood, you work with what you've got. You watch as a young hunter chews on pine resin like gum, maybe to freshen his breath, maybe just to keep his teeth busy. Another carefully strips sinew from a deer leg, twisting it into thread while sneaking bites from the leftover scraps. You realize quickly that nothing here goes to waste. Bones become tools, hides become clothes, fat becomes candles. And yes, every last morsel of meat gets eaten, whether it tastes good or not. The hunters return at midday, dragging the carcass of a reindeer, its body stiff with frost. With practiced efficiency, the group sets upon it, knives slicing through hide and muscle, the air filling with the metallic tang of blood. You notice they don't just take the choicest cuts, they harvest everything. Tongue, liver, heart, kidneys. In a world where every calorie counts, there's no room for squeamishness. One man even hacks into the stomach to retrieve half-digested plants, which, once boiled, make a fibrous stew. You try not to think too hard about that one. Historians still argue whether humans of the Ice Age were primarily opportunists, scavenging from predator kills, or skilled hunters who could regularly take down giants like mammoths. Either way, the resourcefulness of these people is undeniable. They knew every trick, every edible root, every way to stretch a meal further than you thought possible. The meal winds down, and someone passes you a crude cup carved from horn, filled with snow melted into water and flavored faintly with bone broth. It's warm, salty, and comforting in its own strange way. Around you, the group laughs softly, exchanging words you can't understand, but whose rhythm feels familiar. A joke, a story, maybe even gentle teasing. For a moment, despite the harshness of their diet, you feel a sense of community at this table of snow and fire. You lean back, stomach fuller than you expected, and glance toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, more herds roam, more roots lie hidden under frost, and more odd recipes await discovery. Maybe tomorrow you'll be brave, enough to try roasted insects or fermented fish buried under ice. Tonight, though, you're content to sit with your ancestors, chewing on marrow and thinking, just for fun, that Michelin would never give this place a star but survival. That's 5 stars every time. As night creeps back over the plains, the hunters and families shuffle closer together, not just for warmth, but for safety. You notice that this camp doesn't look like the ones you've seen in movies. It isn't just a random pile of sticks or a lonely cave. Instead, the shelters here are cleverly built. Cobbled together from whatever materials the frozen world provides, you step closer, curious, and realize you're about to tour the real estate market of the Ice Age. The first shelter is a simple lean-to of mammoth bones and hides. The curved ribs arched like a cathedral frame, draped with stitched-together skins that flap softly in the wind. A smoky fire pit smolders inside, the air thick with the tang of fat ash, and animal grease rubbed into seams to keep out the chill. You duck through the doorway and nearly cough at the haze. Ventilation wasn't really a design priority. Still, it's warm, and in this world, that's all that matters. Next, you follow a child into a cave set into a rocky hillside. The walls glow with firelight, and soot stains the ceiling black from years of smoke. In the corners, piles of furs make crude beds, and the air hums faintly with the echoes of dripping water. You run your hand along the stone, cold and slick. But you realize caves weren't just convenient, they were nature's bunkers, offering both shelter and defense. Of course, the downside was that caves often came preloaded with bears, which is not exactly the kind of roommate you'd hope for. Historians still argue whether early humans actively sought caves or just made do when they found them. But either way, sharing space with Ice Age predators sounds like the worst Airbnb booking ever. Then there's the truly inventive option. Semi-subterranean houses dug into the earth, their roofs covered with sod, hides, or branches. You crouch down into one, and the floor dips beneath the frost line, instantly muting the wind outside. Clever, isn't it? By sinking into the ground, these people created natural insulation against the deadly cold. Modern architects might call it eco-friendly. Ice Age families just called it staying alive. And here comes the quirky tidbit. In Siberia, archaeologists discovered huts made entirely from mammoth, bone skulls stacked like bricks, jaws fitted together like puzzle pieces, tusks forming doorways. Imagine sitting around the fire while the skulls of 50 mammoths stare down at you from the walls. Creepy? Sure. Practical? Absolutely. With trees scarce and stone hard to shape, bones became beams, walls, and even furniture. It's prehistoric recycling at its finest. Inside one of these bone huts, you sit on a pile of hides, watching as smoke curls through a small hole in the roof. Children play with knuckle bones like dice, while adults mend clothes with bone needles, the rhythmic stitching oddly soothing. Despite the harsh conditions outside, there's comfort here, a sense of home. The warmth of breath, the softness of fur, the steady flicker of firelight against pale bones, it's all strangely cozy, in a gothic kind of way. You realize that for these families, shelter wasn't just protection, it was community. These walls, whether stone, hide, or bone, were the thin barrier between survival and the merciless freeze. They held stories, laughter, and whispers through long nights. You glance at the shadows moving along the walls, flickering into shapes of animals, hunters, spirits, perhaps the very beginnings of storytelling itself. Of course, not everything was idyllic. The smoke stings your eyes, the air reeks of fat and sweat, and privacy is non-existent. One sneeze from a neighbor, and suddenly, the whole clan is sniffling, proof that even tens of thousands of years ago, cold season was a group activity. You chuckle to yourself. Some things never change. As the night deepens, you step back outside, blinking at the sudden rush of starlight. The shelters glow faintly from within, little lanterns against the vast darkness. You hear the crackle of fires, the soft murmur of voices, and the occasional cough breaking the stillness. The wind howls, But these fragile homes hold firm. Stubborn little. Defiance posts against a world of ice. You wrap your furs tighter and glance once more at the mammoth bone hut, the cave mouth flickering, and the half-buried sod home. Each one tells the same story: survival through ingenuity, stubbornness, and the refusal to bow to the cold. You can't help but think, if these people could turn bones into houses, maybe they could turn anything into hope. Morning arrives with a brittle, cutting wind, and before the hunters head out, they gather their tools. You squat near the pile, running your fingers over objects that, at first glance, seem simple chunks of stone, splinters of bone, strips of sinew. But when you look closer, you realize you're staring at the technology that kept humanity alive in one of the most unforgiving ages of the planet. The first piece you pick up is a flint blade, sharp enough to slice your finger if you aren't careful. Its edge gleams where it was struck with precision, each flake chipped away by practiced hands. Flint knapping wasn't just banging rocks together, it was an art form. A skilled toolmaker could shape a perfect spear point or scraper in minutes, knowing exactly where to strike to peel off the right shard. These blades carved hides, cut meat, scraped fat, and turned a frozen carcass into shelter and clothing. Without them, survival wasn't even on the table. Next, your eyes catch the gleam of bone and ivory carved into tools. One hunter strings a spear with a sharp point of reindeer antler, polished smooth and strong. Another uses a delicate needle made from bird bone, threading sinew through a patch of hide to repair a cloak. These tiny tools feel intimate, personal, even. You realize they weren't just for necessity, but also for expression. Some handles are etched with simple lines, swirls, or even tiny animals. Who said utility couldn't also be art? And here comes your quirky tidbit. Archaeologists have uncovered bone flutes dating back more than 40,000 years, carved with carefully placed holes. Imagine that music in the middle of the Ice Age. You picture a group huddled in a cave, the fire crackling while someone blows a haunting tune on a bone flute. It's equal parts eerie and comforting. Proof that survival wasn't just about food and shelter, it was about spirit too. Back at the camp, the hunters ready their spears. You notice they've attached detachable points, lashed with sinew, so when the spear strikes, the point can break free and stay lodged in the prey. Clever engineering, really prehistoric equivalents of modern harpoons. They also carry atlets, spear throwers that act like an extension of the arm, hurling a dart with far more force than muscle alone could manage. With these, even a small group of humans could challenge beasts that towered over them. Historians still argue whether humans really took down mammoths with such weapons or mostly scavenged leftovers from predators. But holding one of these spears in your hands, feeling its weight, you can believe it's possible. After all, desperation breeds courage, and courage backed by clever tools changes the odds. Nearby, you see fire-making kits, pieces of flint and iron pyrite, struck together to shower sparks onto dry moss or fungus. It looks simple, but you know from experience that coaxing fire from cold stone is an act of patience bordering on torture. Yet fire meant everything: heat, light, protection, and the ability to cook food so your body could squeeze every calorie from it. You can't help but smile, realizing that the lighter in your pocket is basically a magic trick compared to this. The children play at the edge of camp with miniature tools, tiny flint flakes, wooden sticks, mock spears. It's a reminder that even here, learning started young. Every scrape, every stitch, every spark mattered. There were no classrooms, but the lessons were constant. stitched into the rhythm of survival. You run your hand along a spear shaft polished smooth with age, and for a moment, you're struck by how familiar it feels. The materials may be different, but the impulse is the same as today. Humans invent, tinker, improve. We're toolmakers at our core, whether it's stone blades or smartphones. The continuity is humbling, as the hunters shoulder their weapons and head into the snowy expanse. You stay behind, watching them vanish against the glare of ice. You picture the risks they face: saber-toothed cats, stampeding herds, the possibility of returning empty-handed. Each step they take is a gamble, but without tools, there wouldn't even be a game to play. The wind rises, and you tuck yourself closer to the fire, fingering the flint blade one last time. Its edge glints in the light, sharp, timeless, unyielding. You think about how many lives may have depended on tools just like this. How many meals were carved, how many shelters built, how many stories kept alive because of one small piece of stone shaped by patient hands. And as the firelight dances over your face, you realize that here, in this age of ice, technology wasn't about luxury, it was about survival, creativity, and the quiet triumph of human persistence. The camp stirs restlessly the next morning, whispers rippling like wind through fur hoods. Something is changing. You feel it too. The air is colder than usual, the wind sharper, as though the earth itself is hinting at a shift. Soon, you realize why. The clan is preparing to move. Out here, survival means following the seasons, following the herds, and sometimes following the land itself as it stretches and shifts beneath your feet. You sling a bundle of hides over your shoulders and join them as they pack. Spears are tied together, scraps of dried meat tucked into skin pouches. Fire carried carefully in smoldering bundles of moss to light the next camp. The destination? A place whispered about around the fire, a frozen bridge of land that stretches where today you'd expect only ocean. As you march, the ground beneath your boots grows flatter, wind whipping hard across the plain. It takes you a moment to realize what you're walking on isn't a typical valley. It's a stretch of land that shouldn't exist. During the Ice Age, sea levels were so low that continents once separated by waves were connected by solid earth. Imagine it, Siberia and Alaska linked by a vast, windswept plain known as Beringia. Today, you'd need a passport and a plane ticket. Back then, you just needed warm feet and an unshakable will. Herds of reindeer dot the horizon, their hooves churning up clouds of frozen dust as they move across this ancient highway. Woolly mammoths, too, lumber along, their heavy bodies strangely at home in this bleak emptiness. For hunters, it's a supermarket on legs. If you don't mind your groceries occasionally trying to trample you, you stick close to the group, realizing that without them, you'd vanish into the void of white stretching in every direction. Historians still argue how many humans crossed these frozen bridges and when. Some say it happened in waves, small groups venturing out and never returning. Others argue there were thriving communities that lingered on the bridge itself, living in the strange no-man's land between continents. What's certain is that these migrations changed everything. New lands were settled, new paths opened, and eventually, the Americas would echo with human footsteps for the very first time. As you walk, the wind carries the cries of birds overhead, snowy owls circling in search of prey, ravens croaking like the world's oldest comedians. The ground crunches, and you stumble across something unexpected, the frozen remains of a steppe bison. Half buried in ice, its horns curling defiantly, even in death. The group pauses, hacking off strips of meat that, against all odds, are still edible. Nature's freezer really does keep things fresh. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some scientists believe the people crossing these bridges brought their dogs with them, making man's best friend also man's best travel buddy. Imagine trudging across endless tundra with a scrappy wolf dog trotting beside you. Ears pricked, nose twitching at scents you can't even imagine. Forget sleds and skis' loyal paws. May have been the real game changer in these migrations. As the group trudges forward, you notice the way they read the land. A hunter kneels to touch the ground, sniffing the air like it's a map. Another studies the stars when night falls, their faint light guiding the way. There are no signposts here, no compasses. No maps, just instinct, memory, and the shared knowledge passed down through stories. The days blur together, each one a march through wind and snow. The nights spent huddled under hides, while the fire sputters weakly against the cold. Yet the promise of new land, new herds, new hope keeps them moving. You can feel it too, that quiet thrill of stepping where no one has before, of walking into the unknown. By the time you finally crest a rise and glimpse the faint outline of distant forests on the far horizon. Your legs ache, your face is stiff with frost, and your breath feels like smoke in your lungs. But the sight of trees means shelter, rivers, maybe even more game. You realize you've crossed a threshold not just of land, but of history. Behind you lies the old world of ice and bone. Ahead, a new chapter for humankind. And as you take those final weary steps onto solid ground once more, you understand why they risked it. To stay still was death. To move was survival. And survival meant carving a path across continents, one frozen step at a time. The journey carries you into a darker place, now not dark with danger, but dark with mystery. The forest you glimpsed earlier gives way to cliffs and rocky hills. And at the base of one, a yawning cave mouth gapes like the entrance to another world. The hunters pause, glancing at one another with a mix of reverence and caution. You feel it too. This isn't just a shelter. It's something sacred. Inside, the air is damp and cool, smelling faintly of smoke, moss, and earth. The flicker of torches dances across the walls. And suddenly, you see them figures frozen in time, painted in ochre, charcoal, and mineral pigments. Bison charge across the stone. Mammoths march in profile. Deer leap mid-stride. And handprints bloom like silent signatures from people long gone. You stand transfixed, realizing these weren't doodles, they were acts of connection, memory, and maybe even magic. Historians still argue over the purpose of this art. Some believe it was ritual, a way to call on the spirits of animals before a hunt. Others think it was storytelling, the first visual history book humanity ever wrote. And still others suggest it was simply the urge to create, to leave a mark, to say, we were here. Whatever the reason, the effect is undeniable. You feel the hair rise on your arms as though the walls themselves are alive with whispers. One of the hunters kneels near a panel of animals and blows powdered pigment through a hollow bone, leaving a fresh spray of color that sharpens the image. The technique is so clever, so deliberate, that it's hard not to admire it as pure artistry. The lines are fluid, the proportions precise, the movement captured with startling grace. These weren't amateurs with crayons, they were artists, visionaries, perhaps even shamans guiding the group through images. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some cave art includes abstract dots, zigzags, and shapes that don't seem to represent animals at all. Some researchers believe these could have been early calendars or symbolic codes, marking seasons, moon cycles, or migrations. Imagine discovering the ice, age equivalent of sticky notes, scrawled on a wall. Mammoths here in spring. Bring extra spears. You press your hand against a painted palm print, the outline left by someone who lived 20,000 years ago. The size is smaller than yours, the fingers slender, and for a moment, the gulf of millennia feels like nothing. You're touching the memory of a real person, someone who crouched right where you are, holding a torch, maybe humming softly as they pressed their hand against stone. The flicker of light makes the animals seem to move. The bison charge forward. The horses gallop, the deer leap. Was this intentional? Did the artists design their work to come alive in the firelight? Historians still argue about that too. But as you stand there, dazzled by the shifting shadows, you can't help but believe they did. Further in, the walls grow narrower, the air thicker with smoke. You hear chants, low and rhythmic, echoing against the stone. The group you've joined isn't just here to paint, they're here to commune. Perhaps with ancestors, perhaps with the spirits of the beasts they hunt, perhaps with something deeper still. You watch as they sway, their shadows blurring with the painted figures until it's hard to tell where the human ends and the animal begins. You think about modern galleries and museums, the polished halls, the white walls, the whispered reverence. Yet here, in this smoke-filled cave lit only by trembling fire, you feel more awe than in any cathedral or gallery. This is art at its rawest, its most essential, a bridge between survival and spirit. As you step back toward the entrance, blinking at the pale light of day, you realize you've witnessed something profound. These weren't just drawings. They were the first echoes of imagination, the first spark of a need that went beyond eating, sleeping, and surviving. The need to dream, to create, to leave behind a trace that might outlast even the ice age itself. You glance once more into the darkness of the cave, where painted beasts still prowl across stone, and you feel oddly comforted. If humanity could make art in a world of endless ice and danger, maybe that creative fire never really dies. It just changes form, from cave walls to canvases, from stone flutes to symphonies. And so you step out, the cold wind greeting you again, carrying the faint scent of smoke on your furs, the echoes of painted animals, still running across the inside of your mind. The glow of painted caves fades behind you, but the world outside has its own darkness waiting. As the group settles into another camp along the edge of the forest, the night feels heavier, more watchful. You sense it to eyes glinting just beyond the firelight, shadows shifting among the trees. Out here, the ice age belongs not only to humans and mammoths, but to predators that see your clan as nothing more than a midnight snack. You sit near the fire, clutching a spear, ears straining. Somewhere in the distance, a long, mournful howl rises and ripples across the frozen plain. Dire wolves, bigger, bulkier, and nastier than the wolves you know today. They hunt in packs so coordinated, you'd think they attended team-building retreats. One wolf alone, manageable. 15 of them, fanning out like ghostly soldiers? Not so much. A rustle makes everyone turn. And for a heartbeat, you swear you see something massive shift at the tree line, a shadow taller than a man, with shoulders like boulders. The hunters murmur a name you don't recognize, but you understand it quickly enough. The short-faced bear, taller than any human, faster than a galloping horse. It's basically the nightmare upgrade of your average bear. And yes, if you're wondering, you probably wouldn't survive this one either. Historians still argue whether humans and these predators avoided each other or faced off often. Some evidence suggests clans deliberately settled, near cliffs or rivers to give them better defenses. Others say that humans, being the crafty troublemakers we are, sometimes even hunted predators for fur or to eliminate competition. But tonight, as you stare into the black woods, you'd vote firmly for avoidance. Suddenly, a sharp crack splits the silence, bones snapping. The hunters stiffen. Someone tosses more wood on the fire, the flames leaping higher. A shield of light against the pressing dark. You realize how fragile this circle of warmth really is. How a single gust of wind, a single spark gone out, could plunge everyone into prey status. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some Ice Age camps used rings of mammoth bones, not just for shelter, but as predator deterrence. A sort of prehistoric fence. Imagine explaining to your neighbors that your front yard decor is literally a wall of tusks. Functional, intimidating, and weirdly stylish. The fire crackles louder, sparks whirling into the night. And then you catch sight of glowing eyes too. 4, 6 circling. The dire wolves have arrived. They keep their distance, watching, calculating, as though weighing whether the risk is worth it. Your pulse quickens, your grip on the spear tightens. The hunters mutter prayers. One woman tossing a burning stick toward the tree line. The wolves scatter, but you know they're not gone. They're patient. They can wait until dawn, or until someone strays just a little too far from the fire. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow. Every snap of a twig jerks you awake. Every gust of wind sounds like claws scraping stone. And yet, morning does come. The camp stirs, alive, untouched, and you feel both relief and a gnawing awareness. In the Ice Age, humans weren't kings. They were just another animal trying not to be eaten before breakfast. Still, survival has a way of twisting fear into stories. Around the fire that day, the clan laughs nervously, retelling the night's dangers, exaggerating sizes and sounds, until the dire wolves become as big as horses and the bear, practically a mountain on legs. And maybe that's the point, to take what terrifies you and turn it into a tale you can pass on. A lesson dressed in drama. You shoulder your pack when the group moves again. The forest pressing close on either side. Shadows still follow, eyes still watch. But you find yourself oddly grateful for them. After all, without predators, there's no edge, no challenge. No sharpened instincts that make every footstep matter. And besides, you remind yourself with a smirk at least you didn't end up as breakfast. Not yet anyway. The march takes you further into the frozen wilderness. And soon you notice something shifting in the clan. They move differently now, slower, more deliberate. Their eyes turning to the ground as often as the horizon. It's not the hunt or predators that drive them at the moment, it's hunger. Winter has sunk its claws in deeper than usual, and the herds you once relied on seem to have vanished into thin air. You trail behind a small group of hunters as they scour the snow. For tracks, nothing. No mammoths. No bison, not even the telltale prints of a hare. Just wind, ice, and the hollow ache of empty bellies. Food scarcity isn't new in the Ice Age. It's practically a seasonal guest, but this time, the silence feels heavier, the snow more merciless. Back at camp, the mood grows tense. Mothers hush crying children. Hunters trade frustrated glances. And the fire seems smaller than usual. You realize how fragile life really is here. In your world, you complain when your takeout is late. In this one, you can't even guarantee tomorrow's dinner exists. Historians still argue whether these shortages forced groups to move constantly, or whether some clans hunkered down, rationing every scrap in hopes of outlasting the winter. Both strategies had risks. Move too soon, and you waste precious energy searching for food that isn't there. Stay too long, and starvation knocks on the door before the thaw arrives. Either way, every decision teeters on the knife's edge. You watch as hunters break into smaller groups, each trying different tactics. Some dig for roots hidden beneath layers of ice. Others check rabbit snares, their faces lighting up at the rare catch of something so small it wouldn't feed more than one person. Still, a meal is a meal, and in times like these, even a bite is a blessing. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers believe Ice Age humans sometimes chewed on bones, not just for marrow, but for the lingering taste of fat. A kind of prehistoric chewing gum. Imagine gnawing a femur just for flavor. Not exactly minty fresh, but desperate times, desperate measures. As days pass with little improvement, you feel the gnawing emptiness in your own belly. You notice how everyone starts conserving energy. Moving less, speaking less, conserving words like they conserve food. Fires are kept small to preserve fuel. Meals, when they happen, are divided with painful precision. Each portion weighed by fairness and survival. One evening, you gather close to the fire with the others. The air thick with smoke and weariness. The elder speaks in a low voice, reminding the clan of past winters survived, of hunts that seemed hopeless but turned triumphant. It's not just reassurance, it's strategy. Hope, after all, is fuel too. Without it, people give up, and in this world, giving up is the same as dying. Finally, a break comes. One of the scouts returns, breathless and wild-eyed, pointing toward the horizon. A small herd of reindeer has been spotted. Relief floods through the camp like warmth itself. Lifting shoulders and sparking chatter. Spears are checked, blades sharpened, bodies prepared. Hunger sharpens more than weapons, it sharpens determination. The next morning, you join the hunters as they creep through the snow. Every step careful, every breath measured. When the moment comes, they strike fast, chasing the herd into confusion. Spears fly, shouts echo, and for the first time in weeks, the silence of the land is broken by the sound of life meeting death. It's harsh, it's raw, but it means survival. The meat is carried back in triumph. And that night, the camp erupts in something almost like joy. Fires blaze higher, children laugh with greasy faces, and stories tumble out freely. You chew roasted meat slowly, savoring every bite, and realize the truth scarcity makes abundance taste like heaven. As you lick your fingers clean, you glance around the fire. The clan survived another test, just barely. And tomorrow, another will come. That's the Ice Age bargain. Endurance paid day by day, sometimes meal by meal. But for now, full stomach silence fear. And for one fleeting night, it feels like plenty. The reindeer feast lingers in your memory as the group presses on. But something in the air feels different now. Hunger has been eased for the moment, yet the land itself seems restless, shifting beneath your feet. The elders mutter about changing winds, about cracks in the ice, about omens they've learned to heed. You soon discover why. One morning, as the sun peeks weakly over the horizon, a deep rumble shakes the ground. At first, you think it's thunder, but there are no clouds. Then, in the distance, you see it, a wall of ice, cracked and splintered, shedding massive chunks into the valley below. A glacier is moving slow enough that you could walk beside it, yet powerful enough to carve entire mountains into rubble. You stand frozen as blocks the size of houses tumble and shatter. The roar echoes for miles. A reminder that the Ice Age doesn't just shape lives, it reshapes the earth itself. Valleys are gouged deeper, rivers are rooted, plains flattened. Historians still argue whether humans of the time fully grasped these changes or simply adapted without asking questions. But you know one thing, living here means dancing with a landscape that never stays still. As the group skirts the shifting ice, you notice signs of the glacier's work everywhere. U-shaped valleys cut into the rock like scars, striations etched into stone, perfectly straight lines carved by rock grinding against rock. Giant boulders stranded in odd places, like toys dropped by a careless giant. These are the fingerprints of ice, and you're walking through its gallery. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some boulders, carried by glaciers, ended up hundreds of miles from their original homes. Today, scientists call them erratics. But you can imagine Ice Age, people puzzling over them stones that didn't match their surroundings, almost as if placed there by spirits. Maybe they even became sacred markers, guiding migration or inspiring myths. The danger isn't just the moving ice, though. With glaciers melting and freezing, rivers swell without warning, flooding entire valleys. You stumble through slush as hunters shout for the group to hurry, dragging children up to higher ground. The water is freezing, numbing your legs, and you can't help but think, yep, this is worse than stepping in a puddle with socks on. When you reach safety, soaked and shivering, you glance back to see the valley filling like a basin. Within hours, what was once a trail is now a shimmering lake, reflecting the cold light of the sun. For Ice Age people, this wasn't just inconvenience, it was life rewritten. A home one day, a lake the next, a hunting path today, a glacier tomorrow. And yet, resilience wins again. As the water settles, fish flash beneath the surface, a new source of food. Birds circle overhead, ready to swoop down. What looks like disaster can quickly become opportunity. And you realize the clan has learned to see both sides. That night, campfires are lit on higher ground. The elder points to the horizon, speaking softly about how the land shifts because the earth itself breathes, groans and changes. You watch sparks rise into the cold sky and wonder, how many generations witnessed this same story? Never quite the same, always unpredictable. As you curl into your furs, the distant crack of another glacier rumbles like a lullaby. The earth is loud, restless, unstoppable. And yet here you are, a fragile human in its path, learning to survive not by conquering, but by adapting. Step after uncertain step, the glacier's roar fades behind you, but its memory lingers as the clan travels on. You've begun to notice something curious. No matter how harsh the storms, no matter how hungry the bellies, people still find ways to decorate, to carve, to play. It strikes you as strange at first. Why spend precious energy on beauty when survival already demands so much? And yet, the answer comes quickly enough. Humans, even in the Ice Age, refuse to live on survival alone. They need meaning too. One evening, the hunters return from the tundra, carrying not only meat, but also bundles of bird feathers. Instead of discarding them, women weave the feathers into hair, tucking them behind ears or stitching them into furs. Children squeal with laughter, imitating the flutter of wings, turning the bleak camp into something festive. You watch, half amused, half amazed, realizing that even in a world of snow and hunger, people still crave color. Nearby, a young man sits with a bone and a sharp flake of stone. Slowly, patiently, he carves lines into the surface, spirals that seem to have no function other than looking pleasing. Historians still argue whether these marks were symbols with meaning or simply doodles born of idle moments. But as you watch him concentrate, tongue caught between his teeth. You sense that it doesn't matter what matters is expression. The act of leaving something behind that says, I was here. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some Ice Age flutes were made from bird bones, hollowed out and pierced with tiny holes. Imagine the sound thin, haunting, echoing through caves. The very first concerts, played not for profit, but for the simple joy of rhythm and tone. You catch yourself wishing someone in this clan had won, just to break up the endless drumbeat of wind. Later, as the fire crackles, you notice body paint being mixed, not from store-bought pallets, of course, but from crushed ochre, charcoal, even powdered bones. Fingers smear red lines across foreheads, circles on cheeks, streaks down arms. The designs vary, some simple, some elaborate, and though no one explains their meaning, you can feel the weight of ritual in the act. Maybe it's for hunting luck. Maybe it's for beauty. Maybe it's just because staring at each other's dirty faces, day after day, gets boring. Children, ever inventive, turn bones into toys, tossing knuckle bones in games that resemble dice. The camp rings with laughter, proof that play is as vital as food when it comes to keeping spirits alive. You smirk, thinking about how some things never change. Kids will always find a way to turn random junk into entertainment. Historians still argue whether artistic flourishes helped cement social bonds or whether they were early attempts at religion. Did painting a reindeer on a cave wall make the next hunt more successful? Or did it just pass the time on a stormy night? Either way, you realize the result is the same art gives people a reason to carry on. A sense that life is more than just the next mouthful of meat. The clan's elder, watching all of this, murmurs something about how beauty feeds the soul. You catch the words, half skeptical, half enchanted. It's true, though sitting in the glow of feathers, carvings and painted faces, the endless cold feels less sharp. As you settle into your furs, you reflect on the strange irony. In a world where survival is brutally uncertain, people still reach for permanence symbols etched into stone, music made from fragile bone, laughter carved out of hunger. And maybe that's the real secret of the Ice Age, not just surviving, but living in a way that says, this moment matters. Even if it fades into snow, the feathers, the carvings, the laughter, they linger in your thoughts as the clan presses onward. But survival in the Ice Age has a way of snapping you back to reality. One moment, you're admiring a spiral scratched into bone. The next, you're dodging a predator that sees you as dinner. Out here, danger doesn't politely knock at charges. Straight through the snow with teeth bared. It begins with the scent of blood. Hunters have brought down a reindeer, dragging it back to camp in triumph. The fire is lit, knives ready, stomachs growling. But before the first bite is carved, a low growl cuts through the night. Your skin prickles, and when you glance toward the shadows, you catch the gleam of eyes, wolves, not the husky-looking pets you see today, but massive Ice Age wolves, bulkier, hungrier, their jaws built to crack bone. The pack moves in, circling, their paws silent on the snow. The clan reacts instantly, grabbing spears, hurling torches, shouting into the night. Sparks rise, smoke curls, and the wolves hesitate. For a moment, the standoff holds. You grip a stick, heart hammering, and think to yourself, fantastic. I'm about to be in the world's coldest horror movie. Historians still argue whether humans and wolves were only enemies at this stage, or if early domestication had already begun, with some wolves lingering on the edges of camps to scavenge and slowly becoming allies. Tonight, however, these wolves are all teeth and hunger, and there's no friendship in their eyes. Eventually, fire and numbers win. The wolves retreat, snarling, their silhouettes melting back into the night. But the message is clear. In the Ice Age, you're never the top predator. At best, you're competing in a very crowded food chain. The next day brings another lesson. As you trek along a river's edge, a shadow passes overhead. You glance up, and nearly trip above you glides a bird, so large it looks prehistoric. Wings stretched impossibly wide. It's a condor, an Ice Age version so huge it could make a modern bald eagle look like a sparrow. Its wings beat slowly, lazily, as if to remind you, even the sky holds giants here. Later, near dusk, the hunters point out tracks in the snow bigger than your hand, with claws that dig deep into the ice. You follow cautiously until the creature reveals itself, a short-faced bear, taller than any man, heavier than any animal you've seen yet. It stands on hind legs and sniffs the air. Historians still argue whether humans ever truly hunted these beasts or merely avoided them. Because honestly, who volunteers to fight a mountain with fur? Here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers think people may have scavenged from predator kills, sneaking in to steal meat while giants, like bears or saber-toothed cats, were distracted. Imagine creeping up to a half-eaten carcass, whispering, "Don't mind me," just grabbing a leg before you come back. Brave or foolish? Probably both. As night falls, the clan huddles close. The fire feels smaller than usual, as though flames alone can't keep back the dark filled with eyes, claws, and wings. And yet, you notice a calm among the group. They've lived with this danger so long it's become routine. Just another part of the background. Hum of survival. Predators are terrifying, yes, but they also keep the balance without them. The herds might overrun the land, food chains would crumble, and survival would be different in ways you can hardly imagine. You lie awake, listening to the distant howl of wolves, the scream of some unseen bird, the crunch of ice shifting under weight too heavy to guess. Sleep comes slowly, filled with dreams of teeth, talons, and shadows. But even as fear curls in your stomach, you realize something important. Danger sharpens the will to live. Every predator's growl, every shadow overhead, it all reminds you how much the clan wants to see tomorrow's sunrise. The howls fade into the distance, and morning greets you with a strange calm. The air feels softer somehow, the snow less cruel, as if the land itself is beginning to change. You notice it first in the river. The ice breaks sooner this season, water rushing faster and stronger. The elders whisper that the world is warming, though not everyone believes it. Historians still argue whether people of the time truly sensed the coming end of the Ice Age, or simply thought it was another shift in the Earth's moods. You keep moving, and the clues multiply. Herds migrate earlier. Grass pushes stubbornly through melting drifts. Even the sky feels brighter, longer days stretching out like a promise. It's subtle, but undeniable. The frozen world you've trudged through is loosening its grip, and you can't help but smirk at the irony. After surviving endless winters, the reward is climate change. Just when you've gotten used to one nightmare, here comes another. Along the way, you pass valleys shaped by retreating glaciers. The scars are fresh grooves carved deep into rock, cliffs torn apart, lakes shimmering where none existed before. You wade through meadows forming in their wake, green against the gray, and wonder if future generations will even believe such a frozen age once ruled the world. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some regions, mammoths and mastodons lingered thousands of years after the ice receded, grazing among early human settlements. Imagine sipping water from a stream while a shaggy giant lumbers past, a relic of a world already vanishing. For the people alive then, the Ice Age wasn't a single event, it was a long, slow farewell. But with change comes challenge. Warmer climates invite new plants, new animals, and new diseases. Rivers swell unpredictably, flooding land that once seemed solid. Hunters, once masters of the mammoth chase, must adapt to deer, elk, and smaller prey. The tools change, the strategies shift, but the need remains the same. Find food, stay safe, keep moving. As the days stretch longer, you notice more laughter around the fire. Children chase each other in grass instead of snow. Women gather new herbs, experimenting with flavors the clan has never tasted before. Men trade heavy furs for lighter wraps. The world isn't easier, but it is different. And difference feels like possibility. Historians still argue whether this warming spurred the earliest seeds of farming, or whether people clung to nomadic life a little longer. But you can imagine the temptation to settle in one place, to plant seeds in soil instead of chasing herds, to let stability replace constant wandering. You feel it too, the tug of permanence, even as your feet itch for the trail. And then comes a night unlike any other. The fire crackles low, the stars shine brighter than you've ever seen, and the elder speaks of endings and beginnings. She tells of how the world breathes in cycles: ice, warmth, growth, decline. Nothing lasts forever, not even the coldest winter. You find yourself leaning closer, soothed not by certainty, but by the promise that change is part of the rhythm of living. As you drift toward sleep, wrapped in furs lighter than before, you sense the journey nearing its close. The Ice Age is ending, but its lessons linger: resilience, adaptation, and the quiet insistence on beauty. Even in the harshest of landscapes, the wind softens, the snow recedes, the earth exhales, and you rest in the gentle knowledge that survival has brought you here, to the edge of a new world waiting to unfold. Now the journey slows, the edges of memory softening like melting snow. The footsteps you've taken through frost and fire fade into quiet, leaving only a gentle hush in their place. The dangers of predators, the bite of the wind, the rumble of glaciers, they've all become distant echoes. Stories whispered by the earth long after the voices fell silent. Breathe deeper now. Let the Ice Age slip behind you, like a heavy cloak sliding from your shoulders. The snow is no longer biting, the darkness no longer pressing in. Instead, you find yourself lying in soft grass, warm air drifting across your skin, the stars calm and endless above. The fire nearby glows faint, steady, more ember than flame, a companion rather than a shield. The world has shifted, but you don't need to follow anymore. You can rest. You can let go of the chase, the cold, the weight of survival. Just imagine the ground beneath you, cool but forgiving, and the hum of night insects weaving a lullaby in the quiet. Your body feels heavier with each breath, as though the earth itself is holding you, reminding you that you're safe now, that you've made it through. No more trudging through snow, no more scanning the dark for eyes. Just stillness, just calm. And as your eyes close, the Ice Age becomes a dream, a journey you've walked, a story you've heard, a reminder of how fragile and how strong you are. The snow fades, the fire dims, and all that's left is peace. Sleep now. Let the quiet take over. Let the warmth carry you. The Ice Age is behind you, and only rest lies ahead. End of script. Sweet dreams.